Welcome to Leading Questions. I'm Alfredo Medina, Executive Director of the Office of Public Engagement.
And my name is Damilola Adesanya. I'm currently a senior, as well as the president of the Student Association.
My name is Brad Hershenson. I'm the president of the SUNY Student Assembly, the system-wide student government organization representing the 64 campuses across SUNY. I'm a doctoral student in the College of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity, and Emergency Preparedness at the University of Albany.
All right, we're your hosts for tonight's conversation with our esteemed guest, New York State Senator Jamaal T. Bailey. We hope you'll gain valuable insights about what it means to be a leader, whether in your future career, during your studies at the University of Albany, or as a member of our home community. Before we get started, I want to ask you to please send your questions for the Senator through the Q&A function. You can send them anytime during the program. Feel free to indicate your class year and program of study and your hometown with your question. We'll be sharing your questions with Senator Bailey a little later in the program. I also want to let you know that the chat function will not be live during the program.
So before we meet the amazing Senator Bailey, we'd like to know what's on your mind, with less than 2 weeks to Election Day.
Tonight's first poll question is, what issue concerns you most right now? And we'll get our poll up. Everyone can vote here. Our choices are climate or environment, COVID-19, dissatisfaction with government, economy, healthcare, jobs, national security, poverty, racism, and other.
Okay, so we're just going to wait as the polls come in. Okay, and we're seeing what shouldn't be surprising, COVID-19 coming in at about 29%, followed shortly right with dissatisfaction with government. And a really huge one, which probably surpasses all of them, is racism. And then followed then by climate. So right there you have it, Senator. Racism, COVID, dissatisfaction with government, and climate control for the main topics of concern.
So we'll ask our guest for his reaction to the poll results in a moment. It's time to meet him now. Senator Jamaal Bailey, a 2004 alumnus of UAlbany's communication program, represents New York's 36th State Senate District, which covers the Bronx neighborhoods of Norwood, Bedford Park, Williamsbridge, Co-op City, Wakefield, and Baychester, and the Westchester city of Mount Vernon. He was elected to the State Senate on November 8, 2016, and currently chairs the committees on codes. Prior to his election, he served as Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie's Community Relations Director after having served as district leader of the 83rd Assembly District for 6 years. Senator Bailey was recently named leader of the Bronx Democratic Party. He is a member of the Williamsbridge branch for the NAACP and mentors young men at Butler United Methodist Church, where he still remains an active member. As a college senior at UAlbany, Senator Bailey began his career in government as an intern for Assembly member Speaker Carl Hastie. The senator, a strong advocate for social and economic justice, is a graduate of the Community and Economic Development Clinic of CUNY Law. He and his wife, Giomara, and 2 young daughters reside in Baychester. So welcome, Senator Bailey. It's a pleasure to have you.
UA?
You know? Okay.
Yes. Oh man, first lesson. First lesson before we get into one, thank you for having me. Right. So let's let's get right to it. This is something, government is something that you do for the people, and that you should have attitude of service, but you can't change who you are, right? I have a saying that you can code switch, but you can never soul switch. Code switching is appropriate, right? Sometimes you have to wear a jacket and a shirt and tie because that's what calls for the situation. Certain times you're using certain vernacular and other times you're not. But you never switch your soul. You gotta be true to who you are. And coming up, I stayed at Steinmetz, and then we went to Montauk after it was renovated. And then we were in the low rises at Van Ren. and then I was in Dutch Tower, and then I was on Empire. So that's where I was at UA. I won't forget where I come from, because, and that's why I have to come on with UA, because before I was a state senator, I was just a kid from the Bronx who wanted to get involved with his community and be involved in higher education and get a great degree from what I believe to be the best 4-year institution in the country. So I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to, I don't have my purple and gold on today. I was thinking about wearing it, but I had purple on yesterday for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I didn't want to go back to back, because sometimes, people, they want to talk about your outfits, right? But in all seriousness, I'm just really excited to be here, and looking forward to having a dynamic conversation about those poll results and pretty much anything you want to talk about.
Well, good evening, Senator, and thank you so much for joining us. We can see you're definitely one of us. I stayed on one of those quads as well. Dami's on campus as well, and it's so great to have you here with us tonight. So as we were going through the poll, did you find yourself surprised by some of the results, or is that consistent with what you're hearing from your colleagues?
It's consistent with what I'm hearing from the community. COVID-19 is very real, and just look, the PSAs, it's not a joke, right? When people tell you to wear a mask and wash your hands, look, I'm a Democrat, but I'm not here to tell you partisan nonsense that wearing a mask isn't partisan. It's decency, it's respect, it's making sure that you don't transmit what has quite literally killed 220,000 Americans to other people. So that's where I'm at, right? That's where we should all be, with respecting each other concerning COVID. Distrusting government, I understand. But how do we restore that faith in government? It starts with, you have to meet us some part of the way. Now, sometimes in government, we have to do more. Often we have to do more. But here's the thing, right? You're part of the solution or you're part of the problem. Straight up. So what's your choice? Now, I always have a saying, like, if I don't do something, right, I'd like for you to give me that right of refusal. I'm using it out of context, but here, give me the chance to not do something, right? I represent a district of 318,000 amazing people, and I have the best staff in the business. However, there's no possible way that we are going to be able to know every single thing that's happening in the district. So it is incumbent upon you, residents of the 36th Senatorial District and other senatorial districts throughout the state, and if you're not in the state of New York, whatever Senate district you live in, to make sure that your representative knows what's happening. So if you tell me and my staff what's happening, and we choose not to do something, then you should complain to the high heavens. You should go on Twitter, you should go on Facebook, Instagram, and other bunch of social media things that I don't have on my phone, and you should complain about us. But give us the opportunity to serve you first. And sometimes it's hard, right? Sometimes when you see what's happening on a national level, it's disenchanting. It makes you not want to believe. But when we're in a state, right? We're in a state when you finally have the first African-American speaker in the history of the New York State Assembly, and he's a graduate of SUNY Stony Brook and Carl Hastie, right? And you have the first African-American woman to serve in the history of the state of New York as majority leader, and it's a Black woman, Andrea Stewart-Cousins. There's hope. There's light at the end of the tunnel. Like, even though we don't see it at 1600 Pennsylvania, or I don't see it at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, there is hope. Racism, I'm a Black man in America before I'm a state senator. Yes, it's real, it's present. And I know sometimes it's uncomfortable to have conversations about the quote unquote race card, right? Let's be real. If we're family, this is UA, right? Let's be real for a second. Brothers and sisters and brothers, and those who are non-binary, who do not identify, let's be real for a second. Racism has been a part of the fabric of this country intentionally since its founding. Now it's up to us to have uncomfortable conversations to, in the words of a movie called Higher Learning, to unlearn some of the things that we've been taught. Unconscious biases that we all have, unintentional biases that we have to have conversations about them. Because sitting there in our echo chambers does nothing for the collective. You can stay in your Facebook echo chamber if you want, right? That's great. Everybody agrees with you. It's safe, it's comfortable, it's warm, it's nice. But it's not the real world. It's not the world where people are being shamed for the color of their skin or kneeled on for 8 minutes and 46 seconds because of who they are and who they scare and who fears them. It is still critical in this country that we get past the point where we have to have conversations. Getting past racism is something that we're going to continue to work on, but getting past the point where we have to understand these conversations have to happen is something that's critical, and it should happen in rooms and in Zooms and in every possible medium of communication. I'm a communications major at the heart, and I learned in Michael Barbarick's class and Jenny Stroh-McGalley's class and Cherie Strawn's class. I don't think any of them are there. I don't know if maybe Mike Barbarick is there. But Marshall McLuhan, famous communications theories, said the medium is the message. It's not necessarily what you say, brothers and sisters, but it's how you say it. You have to go about things in a more positive and reasonable fashion, and that's what my take from those polls. And I want to make sure we continue to have a little bit more conversations as well. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for talking about that. And one thing that you said that stood out is you are part of the solution or the problem. And I feel like we all need to take that and see how our actions are affecting this world as a whole. So Senator Bailey, I'm sure everyone is curious to know, when and how did you know what path you wanted to pursue?
Wow. It's one of these like, where are you moments, right? So Dutch Tower, junior year, having conversations with friends, and we're talking about an internship program, right? The Assembly internship program, 15 credits, 15 credits and it's paid, right? College student, well, hold on, I'm getting 15 credits and I'm getting a check. Hold on, this is my kind of internship. I don't know what it is. Assembly, what's the Assembly? Of course I knew what it was, just joking. But 15 credits and a paid internship. So I was like, you know what? Let me get myself ready. I wanted to make sure that I graduated with a 4.0 GPA, had some adversity at the beginning of my college career. I was at a 284 or 2 something, like 284, I think. In order to, I can get a 3.02 GPA if I took 18 credits and I got a 4.0. I did it. I did that so I can make sure that I knew walking into that last semester of senior year that I had accomplished my academic goal, but then I was able to accomplish a goal of involvement. And again, I interned with a second-term assembly member who now is the Speaker of the Assembly. And it's Carl Hasty, and he's a Stony Brook grad, and he's somebody who always wanted somebody from his district to be his intern. So I walk into Carl's office, right? And I'm nervous because I know who he is, but I don't know him. I've never met the guy. So I'm shaking, I got the jitters and everything, right? I wasn't used to wearing suits and ties, so my tie knot probably looked crazy. I don't know what I looked like that day. But I remember going into Carl's office and I walked in, I was like, hey, Mr. Hasty, I'm Jamaal Bailey. And I wanted to know, how can I be helpful? Can I get you some coffee or some tea or make some copies for you? He stopped, he said, hold on, brother. 3 things. 1, my name is Carl. Mr. Hasty was my father. 2, I don't drink coffee. I drink tea and I can get it myself. 3, nothing against people who make copies or run errands, but you're here in the legislature to learn. And you're here to be a legislative assistant and you're here to learn. So from then on, I was like, wow, this is what happens when they say government works for you. I sat in meetings with Carl and I went to committee meetings with Carl, and I got to see what somebody honest in government was. Somebody that stood up when he had to stand up, and most importantly, said no when he had to. No is a word that people don't like to hear, and they especially don't like to hear it from elected officials. They don't. I've heard Carl say no to many people, and deservedly so. And when it didn't have the best interests of the 83rd Assembly District, which he represents in mind, and it didn't have the interests of the Bronx, and now in the whole state in his role as Speaker. So I got bit by the political bug as a senior at UAlbany, and I'm happy to say that it has not left my bloodstream, and it only inspires me more to make sure that we're looking out and trying to figure out what that next generation of leaders looks like. So my where were you moment was filling out those internship papers as ending my year in Dutch Quad for the following that following year. So
I didn't even want to cut off your energy because I'm feeling the passion and the energy. I want to just ask another poll question that'll continue with this conversation, but just sort of keeping with the time. Just want to take another quick poll real quick, find out from the audience thinks about what are some of the most challenging aspects of leadership. And I think you'll continue along this path. So we're looking at here, balancing authority, building consensus, communicating effectively, dealing with change, handling conflict, inspiring, coaching others, managing people, operating ethically, staying true to your principles, and any others that they want to consider. So we're just going to take a quick poll, wait for the results to pop up. All right, and so handling conflict, and balancing authority, communicating effectively. Those kind of the top three that we have there. So again, just for you to think about as we continue with our conversation of what our folks are interested in hearing more about. Thank
sure.
you.
So, well, the leading one was balancing authority. Was that the number one, or was it
handling conflict? Handling conflict.
So I'm a kid that I'm at the intersection of hip hop, government, and sports, right? And I got a saying that Jay-Z says, nobody wins when the family feuds, right? Right. So you got to figure out, how do you get past these intra-party squabbles, and how do you get past the Democrat versus Republican squabbles, right? The most important thing, and ties into balancing authority, is treating people like people. Seems to be a novel concept, not necessarily practice on his face too much, but treat people like people, right? I am not, and this is not to make it a partisan or ideological conversation, but I'm a Democrat, and I'm damn proud to be a Democrat. I think that we stand up for some great values. But I don't hate Republicans, not in the least bit. Actually, quite frankly, when there's some members of the legislature who I could not agree, I very, very rarely agree with on policy. And I'm gonna shout out Fred Akshar, Andy Lanza, Phil Boyle, and John Flanagan. I'm gonna shout those four out. Not because I don't like anybody else in the Republican Party. I get along with everybody. But those four people, I may not agree with them on policy, but when my mother-in-law passed away because of COVID-19, each and every one of them reached out. Because we're people first. We're people. Like, you gotta get past this polarizing conversation that we have that's driven by the national politics that says, I do this, so I must do this. And if you think this, then you're wrong. Well, that's wrong. I'm telling you, that's wrong. You have to be able to have conversations with people. Spending time in the minority party, as in my first term as a senator, taught me a hell of a lot. Because you have to go to Republicans to try to get your bills done, but when you do that, you have to learn how to have conversations with people. And you get to respect people as people. So how do we get past these conflicts? One, it is understanding that inherently, I want to say 85 to 90% of things we all agree on, right? We all want safe streets. We all want quality education. We want to make sure our kids are good. We want to make sure we have safe places to live. We want to make sure there's food to eat. I don't know anybody that doesn't want those things, right? So we can agree on that. Sometimes it's just the destination. I always tell a story about my family from North Carolina, and we go to the family reunion every first Saturday in August, right? And so when we're going to North Carolina, I like to take 95. My dad likes to take the Baltimore-Washington Parkway. It's more scenic. That's the way he likes. I don't know why he likes to take that way. He doesn't know why I like to take 95, but we're all trying to get to North Carolina to get to the reunion. A different route towards the same success doesn't mean much different. But again, just because you are able to get along with people doesn't mean you change the core of who you are. You code switch, but you don't soul switch. just because I'm friends with those gentlemen does not mean that I'm going to say, you know what, I agree with you on policy, because I don't. And quite frankly, it's okay. One of the greatest things that we have about democracy is dissent. Because I don't know everything. And you don't know everything. And the quicker that you learn that you don't know everything, the quicker you learn, the more that you learn. I know that may not make sense, but it does. I'm told every day by my wife and my daughters that I don't know everything. Really quick. I know that I don't, right? But, and I say that to say, it is a critical balancing act that we play. In terms of delegating authority, I'm the chair of the Committee on Codes, and I've been newly elected to be the chair of the Bronx Democratic County Committee. And so balancing differences in policy associations and beliefs is something that we're doing at a county level. Having a balancing act in terms of the legislation that we bring forth to the floor is always delicate. And it's making sure that we understand what leadership is. And leadership isn't necessarily telling you what to do, right? It's a dictatorship. And I know by having children, being overly harsh doesn't get you much. You yell at the kids, tune you out. You start trying to be a dictator, people tune you out. Hey, let me hear what you have to say. Let's have a conversation about what's going on. Listen more and talk less. What do they say in Hamilton? Talk less, smile more, right? Sometimes you just have to soak it all in and listen to actually listen. Because so many people in our society, we listen just because it's our next turn, before it's our next turn to talk, right? I'm not really hearing you. All right, I'm finished. Hold on. All right, this guy. All right, well, whatever. Okay, cool. He's talking. All right, boom. I launch into what I have to say, and you're saying the same thing he said, or she said. What are you doing? We have to be better listeners and better consumers of information. Unfortunately, our society, we become a nation of headline readers, and we don't read the byline, or we don't read the main part of the story. We have to get out of that. And there was another part of the poll question. If you could remind me kindly that I may be missing. What was the third one that we got to?
I think those are the main ones. I can't remember the third one. I didn't register enough to gather as much feedback. I think the ones that you kind of nailed on really are the ones that had the heavier votes.
So you've stressed the importance of working together, which I think in these challenging times is so important that we do collectively. And in one of the many roles that you have, you've mentioned you're leader of the Bronx Democratic Party, who I will say you're preceded in this role by former Assemblyman Marcos Crespo, who is a trustee on the SUNY board. All politics is local. So what does it mean to be a leader of the Bronx Democratic Party? And how do you work with so many different people, so many different ideas? How do you work to do that? And what does it mean to be a leader of that party?
Patience. Patience is a virtue. Understanding that, when you're having a great day, when you are enjoying a party or a festive atmosphere, it's important to understand, and it's not to be a Debbie Downer, so to speak, or David Downer, to make sure it's not just Debbie that's a downer. There's somebody that's having a rough day, right? It's understanding what empathy is, and it's also understanding that you have to listen to what people have to say, and understand the complexities of their particular situation, and understand that there's more than meets the eye, right? That when people have issues and concerns in their district, that it may not be because they're trying to take a hardline stance for the sake of such, but because there are significant pressures in their district, or there are significant opposition in their district to some of the things that you're looking to do. I was actually on a call earlier with some really brilliant high school students, right? And they were asking us about the bail reform, and I'm the chair of the codes committee. So all of that, the criminal justice stuff, it all goes through the committee and my committee. And so they were asking, like, how did it feel to have it rolled back? And they were using these terms. And I was like, well, obviously, like, I think that bail reform was critical. People should not be incarcerated because of their wealth or lack thereof. And we have to remember the original intent of what the purpose of bail was, which is simply to guarantee one's return to court. But when we change some of it in the budget, I think that we had to do something that our leadership asked us to do, right? And being part of leadership isn't just doing what you want to do all the time. It is making sure that you look out for people who are being challenged, are being questioned, are having to answer to their constituencies. And I would say that for every colleague that may have had an issue with the bail reform, every single colleague voted for all of the police reforms that we did in June. So I want to make sure that we understand what give and take is about and what leadership is about, in understanding that, we have incredible colleagues from here to Long Island, up throughout the state, and hopefully we'll pick up more. So leadership in the Bronx is just, I'm honored to be the chair of the party because it's the borough that made me, right? Like it's kind of molded who I am, and being at the helm and during a time where we need leadership, I believe, I think is an incredible honor that the members of the party have chosen me. So I'm eternally grateful.
That's great. Just really quickly, what skill would you say a college student should, focus on developing now to prepare them for, public service, public office, or whatever it is in the future? And how would you recommend they go about developing these skills?
One skill, wow. Okay, no, there's a lot of skills, right?
Yeah.
Biggie said, "Stay far from timid and only make moves when your heart's in it, but live the phrase, sky's the limit," right? Like you gotta, it has to be in here. You have to want to do it. You have to want to live a life of public service, right? You have to have a desire to be able to serve, right? Those who have served will then be able to lead, right? Also understand that, be confident in your abilities. Understand that leadership has no arbitrary age. We have lots of arbitrary ages for lots of different things: voting and gambling and drinking and running for president, whatever these arbitrary ages are, right? There's no age, there's no such thing as an age for leadership, because I learned probably more from my 6-year-old and my 3-year-old than I do anybody else in this world. Confidence, learn to listen more. Again, like I just said, treat people with respect. Don't treat people, don't do something, don't go along to get along, don't do something to get something, but treat people with actual respect. Something that I would recommend for each and every one of you is to bring back saying hello. Say hello to people. When you see them on campus, you see them in the store, just say hello to people. It doesn't mean you want anything. Just learn how to talk to people. Sometimes people don't want to be bothered, and sometimes that's that risk you take, and sometimes you have to use your ESP and say, whoa, I don't know about, I'm not bothering them today. But speak to people. They say Southern hospitality, and I take pride in that because my family's originally from the South, but it's not just Southern, it's decency and having respect, and putting those things together in a professional form. Be on time, be willing to do things that other people simply aren't willing to do. If you're early, if you're late, if you're early, you're on time, right? Make sure that you are punctual. Make sure that you, and again, these are things that come out of a book, but most importantly, if you're looking to serve, always remember that you are serving someone else, and that you have to keep the ideals of that individual in mind when you're serving. It's not about what Jamaal Bailey wants to do. It's about what am I doing on behalf of the 36th Senatorial District and the residents of the great state of New York.
Thank you. Brad, you want to go to the next question?
A challenging budget season this year. There's so much at stake for students in public higher education. Funding for programs such as TAP, EOP, Excelsior, and so many aid programs that help students graduate on time and successfully. Is there anything we can do to protect that investment in the state budget process?
Continue to advocate and reach out to your legislators. Look, we are in a budget hole of epic proportions. Even before COVID, we were looking at a shortfall. And now, because of the decimating effects of COVID-19, we are, quite frankly, in an even worse situation. And again, this is not to pass the buck, but the federal government has to step up. Point blank period. Mitch McConnell needs to do something instead of trying to rush a Supreme Court justice through at the last minute. If you had the same tenacity and the same intensity towards putting together a package for people who need relief than you did trying to stack a Supreme Court in your favor for political reasons, then maybe we'd be somewhere, but we're not. That's the attitude you have to take with you beginning in New York on October 24th through November 3rd. But the answer to your question, Bradley, it is about continuing to advocate and agitate and reach out to your elected officials. I don't have the best answer for you because, again, I don't know where we're coming up with the money. I've been a proponent of raising revenue and having various pieces of legislation that I'm in support of to raise revenue to try to pay for some of the shortfalls that we have. And we are, obviously still looking at which of those are feasible and how we get those things done. But between revenue raising and making sure the federal government comes up, there's a space in the middle for you all to continue to agitate, and educate. Oh, I made a new portmanteau, right? But there's a space there. So continue to do that.
All right, well, thank you. We want to also take this moment now to also open it up for conversation with questions from the audience. And so what we're going to do is we've been getting a lot of different questions coming into through the chat, and some of them kind of overlap. And so we're going to try to do is simplify them for you and be sort of cognizant of your time with us. So I'm going to be just kind of getting the questions and reading them out right directly to you, Senator. Is that okay?
Sure, and I'll try to keep my comments as brief as possible.
That's all right. Listen,
I'm not good at that. I'm not good at.
No, listen, we're enjoying that energy. So please continue with that energy and making more quotes with Biggie. So I'm really enjoying that. Question one: what has been your greatest challenge to overcome as a leader?
Wow. I mean, again, being in the minority was tough. A personal challenge, again, my mother-in-law passed away on March 27th due to COVID, and we're right in the middle of the budget, and it was a tumultuous time, and even more so for my wife. So I thank her for having the strength to continue to keep our family together, and my daughters for being the battery in my back. So that's probably the most tumultuous thing that's happened on a personal level. But adversity-wise, was sitting in the conference room in the Capitol. We're in the minority, and we're not getting any bills passed, and we're not getting anything done that is of note. But as the great Reverend Timothy Wright said, trouble don't last always. And we got a majority in the 2018 election cycle. The very first day of that new Senate majority, I saw hope. Senator Zelnor Myrie, a good brother of mine I've known long before we were both elected. The very first day, the very first bill that Leader Stewart Cousins chose to bring up was early voting, something that had been held up for so many years. Tragedy to triumph. We were not able to do anything regarding voting rights. I remember doing hostile amendments to the budget process and arguing about early voting. And I remember being that person who was arguing, and it fell on deaf ears. But joy comes in the morning, as they say in the church. And we were able to get that done. It was just such a remarkable moment in our history. And then again, it wasn't partisan. It was just being able to, why can't we do early voting? Why are you holding this up? What is the point of it? Why? Well, you know what? We don't have to worry about that anymore because we have a great Democratic legislature and we have great folks behind us. So that was very challenging in two respects.
Thank you. Another question. How has your background education, well, let me rephrase that. How has your background, education, and upbringing developed your style of leadership?
You know that you don't do anything by yourself the way I grew up, right? I grew up, my mother and father worked very hard. We lived in a house that was owned by my grandparents. Childcare was often provided by my grandparents when my parents had to work different shifts. Uncles and aunts pitched in. We're a family, right? So that mentality, and then that went down to my church, Butler Memorial United Methodist Church, and being taught lessons there about what leadership actually is and what it's not, and what service is and what it's not, right? And how to do things just the right way because they're the right thing to do. That my upbringing has shaped me immensely. I'm a Bronx boy through and through. There's no better place for me. We are equal in many areas, and this is not to say that my borough is better, but it's the best for me because it created an opportunity for me to be able to see things I wanted to change, and know that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good I am individually if I can't work with the team concept. You can score 50 points a night, but if nobody else on your team is scoring, you are going to lose every single game. It doesn't matter how good you are. It's about how good we are. And those are the lessons that I've learned from my parents, my wife, my daughters, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, and my play cousins, and my play uncles, and the whole neighborhood who raised a kid like me to be able to get to this point, and I'm eternally grateful for them.
Thank you. We have a question here from Kristen. She's a junior political science major from New York City. She attended Brooklyn Tech High, and she's aware that you went to Bronx Science. What, if any, reforms would you like to see from the specialized high school system in New York City? How can we challenge the systemic inequities within New York's public schools?
So it's a great question, Kristen. So I went to science, and a lot of my good friends, they got into science because of something called the Discovery Program. Discovery Program meaning if you don't hit the whatever score it is now, I forget what the number is, which means that it gave you an option to be able to get into schools like science and tech and STI back then when I was going to school, right? Now there are many more specialized high schools, which I'm glad the city has taken the step to. But let's unpack that further, right? The notion of specialized high schools in some ways are really interesting because it creates an educational caste system in some ways, right? It creates a race to the top or the bottom and based upon these arbitrary scores. There's a young lady who's running for office, and she missed Bronx Science, I think, by 2 points, and she only has 2 Ivy League degrees. What does that tell you about what these arbitrary numbers mean, right? So Kristen, my idea, I'm a proponent of a multiple measure approach. I don't know where we're at in the legislature. I don't know what the consensus is going to be, but something I've always been a proponent of is, you keep tests, but you figure out other measures in order to be able to figure out how admission can take place into these specialized schools. And then we should figure out what the funding inequities are to make sure that every school has what it needs, because there is absolutely no reason why I'm able to attend a school that has a weather system and the other kids down the block at Walton who don't have books. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's kids from the same neighborhood. We get on a 26 bus or a 28 bus, and I'm going here where I got a weather station. By the grace of God, I'm grateful. I'm not ungrateful, right? But my boys going to Walton, and they don't have books. It's crazy. So we have to figure out how do we shore up the structural inequities. And Kristen, I'm not smart enough to figure that out yet, but hopefully you are. But I'm pretty sure you are, because you're asking a great question, and maybe we can figure something out together.
Thank you. This next question is from Liana. She's a junior majoring in public policy and management with minors in Spanish and political science. She says it's truly inspiring to see a great thing prosper. She also appreciates your candor on the issues you mentioned. What are some priceless lessons you have learned while mentoring at Butler Methodist Church? What is the toughest task while working for or as a senator yourself, and how did you overcome it?
Okay. So at Butler, we had a project, we had a program called the Timothy Project, right? And so, get the word out, and we talked about like, don't let them put them down because you're young, right? And so what happens is that when you have people who are young, people want to try to say no, wait your turn, right? And it's like a mix in context, right? When people say wait your turn, sometimes it's because they say they're trying to put you down, but sometimes it's because they want you to learn more, right? So the Timothy Project for me was great in terms of being able to mentor young men in our church, and not just in our church, for those who are from outside the church, who wanted to come inside and wanted to learn a little bit about some of the things that we were doing. And actually, I was doing the mentoring as I was going through law school. So like, mentoring is a two-way street. A lot of people don't see it like that, but I do. And here's why. Much like I told you that the greatest lessons that I learned are from my kids. When I'm going through law school, I'm thinking about what my brothers Tremaine and Emilio and all of these brothers that I don't want to name all of them now. I'm gonna get in trouble. They might be watching. That's how you get in trouble. Why you start naming names. Rule number one: when you get elected, don't start naming names. You get in trouble. But the whole TP, shout out to the whole TP, Timothy Project, and learning from them some of the things that they were facing as young Black men coming up in a different time, young Latino men coming up in a different time, in a different era that I've come in. Like, understanding that like this is where cyberbullying was like new. When I was growing up, like there wasn't cyberbullying. It was like, oh, all right, put the hands up, right? We're gonna have that we followed whole conflicts like that, right? We weren't really bullying on AOL Instant Messenger. That wasn't really going on, on AIM, right? But learning what realities are and understanding how to change with the times or be changed by them was a really critical learning experience. And they helped me excel in law school. And now some of them are doctors and thought leaders. And it's just amazing to be able to see that, sometimes, they didn't realize we were seeds, so they tried to bury us. But they didn't realize that we were getting all the water and the air and the sunlight that we needed to grow. So like those are great lessons that I've learned. And some of the things that I would say, I mentioned about the adversity that I've faced. But again, sometimes, legislatively, sometimes you have ideas that people don't necessarily subscribe with, right? And it takes certain things to get certain things passed. Like the repeal of 50A wasn't something that, it wasn't very popular, but it took the minds and the hearts and the minds of so many people to change, and that took a little while to do. And again, I'm grateful for people listening.
Thank you. This next question is from Kim. She's a PhD student in criminal justice, currently interning at the OAG on their policy and legislation team. As you draft bills, or as bills come across your desk for codes, judiciary, etc., what is one thing you always try to keep in mind? In other words, what is your overarching goal with everything you do as a legislator and representative of your district?
People first. And if that's Kim, shout out to Kim. Kim was my session assistant. Kim was phenomenal. And unfortunately, her term with us was cut short because of COVID-19. But Kim had a list of bills like this long that she wanted to draft and she wanted to enact. So like part of your, Dami, that was part of your original question about what do you do when you get in the game? Be prepared, be prepared, be prepared. Kim came in the door with things that she wanted to work on. So thank you, Kim, for all your hard work, and I appreciate you. You keep the people first. So like, it's really weird, right? And it teaches me like, I could never be like real life famous. I would never want to be John Legend or a famous NBA basketball player. Actually, I would. but like, I like to be a middle reliever in baseball, right? I'd still be able to play, but I'd be able to walk down the street and nobody knows who I am. Like that's like my dream job, to be a middle reliever for the New York Mets. Even though I'm a Bronx boy, let's go Mets, right? Sorry, that's not very popular, but do what's right? But sometimes people deify the position of being an elected official. Oh my goodness, Senator, it's great to see you. Like, dude, I'm just trying to get some chicken just like you. Like, we just, I'm trying to get the Popeyes chicken sandwich. That's not good for me, but you in here, like I'm just like you, right? And I think that people need to understand that, yes, it's good to have a healthy level of respect for people. And I think you should treat elected officials with respect, but also understand that what we have to do is for you. I work for the constituents of the 36th Senatorial District. They are the people who renew my 2-year contract every couple of years, as long as they want to send me back to Albany. As a legislator, you must be able to keep the people of your district first and the people of the state after that. And then your own personal opinions obviously affect the way that you legislate, the way that you advocate. But Kim knows this firsthand in having a role in the preparation for debate prep for some of these bills, is you have to make sure you keep the people first and first always.
Okay, it looks like we only have time really for one more question. And so this last one is from Thomas. Thomas is a history major and education minor. His question: how did you involve yourself and your staff in the Black Lives Matter movement in your district? And what leadership qualities meant the most to you during the events that took place during the Black Lives Matter protests?
For me, it was from the individuals who served as allies. It was from people who did not or could not understand what we were going through because of their own worldviews. And it didn't mean that it was right. It didn't mean that it was wrong either. It just means that it was different. For example, I used this example earlier today. I think it's worth fitting, right? So when my wife and I first started dating and we went to her house for Thanksgiving, they didn't watch any football. And on Christmas Day, they didn't watch basketball. I'm like, what is this? Like how do you live like this? Like, this is insane. This is nuts. How do people do this? That didn't mean that I'm right because I watch sports every chance I get. And it didn't mean that she was wrong because her family did it. It just means that we came from different worlds. And when you come from different worlds, sometimes it's really hard to understand what somebody else is thinking until traumatic events like George Floyd in 8 minutes and 46 seconds happen. And then people were forced to listen and say, you know what, you're right. My fault. I didn't realize it was this serious. And so the allyship was critical. The thought leaders and the people willing to go out in the face of the pandemic, you, the people, we, the people in the Constitution, you, the people who went outside in the midst of the worst pandemic we faced in our lifetimes, you made the reform happen because you would not be stopped. You would not be held. You would not do anything else except say, we are sick and tired of being sick and tired. The mothers of Ramarley Graham and Miss Gwen Carr and Constance Malcolm, Gwen Carr, Valerie Bell, Miss Delron Small's sister Victoria, people who were affected by police violence, they've been talking about this. But now, you know what? We took to the streets. We put a mask on, but we took to the streets because we were tired of being tired. And you're going to listen to us. And listen, we did. And at least in New York State is what we did. Kentucky, a little different. A little grand jury issue. All right? But that's how you correct things at the ballot box. And if you don't want grand juries and panel like that again, if you're in Kentucky, you change that in a few more years. If you don't like the way things are happening in your Senate district or your council district or your assembly district, you fix that. You have the power. Remember that. Power to the people is not simply a saying. It is an action, and we must all live by it or face the consequences from not living by it.
Thank you so much. We're just about out of time, Senator Bailey. Any closing thoughts that you would like to leave? Any thoughts, advice that you would like to leave for our students who are with us this evening?
So the unanswered questions, please email them to Senator J. Bailey at nysenate.gov. I was getting ready to say at albany.edu, right? But at nysenate.gov. That's we can hopefully get time to have another conversation like this. Look, voting isn't optional. If you're able to be registered, it's not optional. Like, people died. My grandfather, who came from North Carolina, and he was born in 1929, and he never thought he'd see the day of a black president, right? And if he was alive today, he would never think he'd see the day of such a whack president. But that being said, it is important to understand that people literally died for your right to vote. Respect it. I'm not telling you who to vote for. If you ask me who I'm down with, I'm riding with Biden. That's just me. I'm not advocating for you. I am telling you to make the best decision for you and your families, your households. This election is not just about November 3rd or the 4th or however long it takes to count all of the ballots. This election is about my grandchildren. My children are 6 and 3. And this election is about my grandchildren. It's about the Supreme Court. It's about reproductive rights. It is about the environmental health of our country. It is about the future. So don't throw away your vote. Encourage your friends and your family members and anybody that you can reach out to. Text 25 people. You share memes. I know you share memes. I know you share tweets. I know you share it. If you can share a meme, you can share what the dream was for people. And that's to make sure that you exercise the right to vote when you have it in New York State beginning on October 24th.
Well, you gave us so much tonight, Senator. I want to thank you for being our guest this evening. And as a 3-time UAlbany alum that bleeds purple and gold, I'm happy to say we're very proud to have you as an alum as well. And I want to thank our Leading Questions campus partners, the folks who helped make this possible. And that is the Center for Leadership and Service, the Center for Women in Government and Civil Society, the Division of Student Affairs, the Office of Government and Community Relations, the School of Criminal Justice, Student Association, and the ones who make this magic work behind the scenes so the Zoom doesn't fall apart on us, the ITS field support. I also want to thank my co-hosts, Dami Adesanya and Brad Hershenson, for taking time tonight and being just great moderators. I also want to remind you, and picking up on what Senator Bailey was saying is about voting, that early voting in New York begins October 24th. Before heading out to vote, either early or on election day, please be sure to check where you are registered to make sure you are voting in the correct place. In order to vote in person on campus, you must be registered to vote in Albany County. You can check your registration on the New York State Board of Elections webpage, which is, and I'll spell this out, voterlookup.elections.ny.gov. If you are registered elsewhere in New York, but will be in Albany County on election day, October 27th is the last day to request an absentee ballot. If you plan to vote by absentee ballot, you should request one ASAP. For more information on how and where to vote, visit albany.edu/vote, VOTE. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We'll be back next month with another edition of Leading Questions. Good night.